Hey, welcome to the Phil Carew Show 2.0. I have a very, very special guest here. It's Douglas Vermeeren. How are you, Douglas?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
It's a real honor to have you. I've just looking at your progress here. You're getting involved in some big names here, and even congratulations as well, live, not just on Facebook but LinkedIn, and possibly later on YouTube. You're actual best actor on an independent feature film. Congratulations.
Thank you. That was really a fun and unexpected honor. So very, very cool.
In regards to your acting in there, what got you more involved in the film? Because I know it's not always easy. I know a lot of people, they see what they want to see in front of them, in film, but it must be quite a handful at times when you're trying to juggle a little bit of producing and even sort of directing and even being an actor yourself. You've dabbled in quite a lot of areas, haven't you? You've become like an action man, very versatile, well-rounded actor.
Yeah, well, I started acting when I was about 7. So I've been doing this for a really long time and done a lot of shows. And just like you said, along the way, in addition to acting, we have done some producing and directing. But, I've always been an actor at heart. So I guess we're seeing a lot of actors, funny enough, even entertainers like musicians and stuff getting involved in sort of crossing the line between music and movies and this kind of thing. But it is a lot more common for an actor to get involved eventually in directing and producing. And so I've kind of followed that same path, right? Like I went to film school and all these things. And so that's kind of what led me to doing that.
Oh my goodness, folks, you're in for a treat. Douglas Vermeeren is also known for actually being a Canadian version, almost like Jackie Chan. He's doing his own stunts,
I don't know
flying out
about
of, flying out of helicopters. Oh my goodness! And oh yeah, and also, you sustained sort of an injury not long ago, and it bounced back like nobody's business, and it's great to see you, back in action again, Douglas, and in some films and some other sort of features that you've been involved in recently.
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely when we're doing our own stunts, there is an element of risk involved. But certainly, Jackie is by far a master compared to me. I don't do the stuff that Jackie does. I look at Jackie and my mouth drops. I'm like that's crazy stuff what he's doing, and I'm a big fan. It's kind of interesting. In my neighborhood, they did Shanghai Noon and Shanghai Nights, and so.
Goodness.
Yeah, I've got a lot of friends that worked with him, and we've got nothing but massive respect for that guy. He's incredible.
I wasn't aware of this, but before, you know, I'm not sure whether many people are aware of this, but Canada has been like a really great um, location for filming. The serene and beautiful views that you have there, and the areas that you have there as well. Because there was one particular film. It's supposed to have been in Rumble in the Bronx, but it was actually, if other people were aware of it, when Jackie Chan was there, he actually did, like you mentioned, in he was actually having locations involved in Canada when, well, they preferred to call it the Bronx, but even though most people, when they saw there, even the locals and probably even yourself, probably thought that doesn't look like, look like the Bronx, but
Well,
you know,
that one was shot in Vancouver, and then almost around that same time, they also did Romeo Must Die. You remember that show as well. So that was Vancouver as well. But there's a lot shot here. It's definitely true. But I think nowadays, like we're seeing films shot in a lot of locations in addition to Los Angeles. So I'm part time in LA, I'm part time in Vancouver, and then I'm part time in London. And
wow,
I'm also going wherever else there's other movies. So, for example, this year I've already shot stuff in Toronto. I was in Greensboro, North Carolina. I was in
awesome,
LA. I know I'm in
yes.
Arizona this year doing another movie. I mean, I'm all over the world doing movies, right? So it's just
Oh,
it's
wow.
so much fun.
What's the perks? Have you noticed that that's in relation to acting? Because a lot of the time, it can be tiresome, obviously location wise, but it must be fun. The perks of it, the travel as well. To get to see different places as well.
It is, and obviously we love the people wherever we go, and it's really fun to kind of connect with different people. I mean, sometimes we really get to see quite a few things on our days off, but let's be honest, I'm still here doing a job, right? So we've
Of
got to
course.
make movies. So most of our time is dedicated to that. And a lot of times, because of my schedule, I'm so busy. Sometimes I'll fly into an area, I'll go directly to the hotel, spend the night there, or sometimes even directly to set. And then I'll spend days on the set. And by the time we're wrapped, I'll go directly back to the hotel. And I really haven't seen a lot of the city. But sometimes there will be days off, and we've had a chance to do some really neat things. So I've done movies also in Asia. So I've been to Bali, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, the Philippines. I've been to mainland China, etc. And they've showed me a lot of their beautiful country, and it's been absolutely stunning. So I'm very grateful
Wow.
for those opportunities for sure.
Well, just to let everybody know, if you wasn't aware of it, Douglas Vermeeren isn't just in terms of acting; he's also a writer, and brilliantly so. Put in terms of eloquently showing himself on the camera and off the camera and behind it. But he's also a writer. Now, is there anything that you would bring to mind, and to the audience and the viewers? What type of writing have you got? Because is it more in terms of like a biography, or autobiography like that, or is it based on sort of contribution to other people as well? That you've had involved within the film industry, or even sort of in the past, dabbling into sort of acting.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not doing as much writing anymore, but I've done a lot of creative writing. So I've written in the comic book industry. I've written a lot of scripts that have kind of been there. And then I've done some work briefly in the personal development world. But lately, it's been mostly film scripts. Some of the stuff that we've got that I'm going to be working on in the near future, I've been involved in somewhat as a writer. Not always. I mean, sometimes I'm just kind of working with a team writing stuff. But I've got a few scripts that I have written beginning to end that have been really fun. But how do we say? I wouldn't call myself a writer, because I think there's far better writers than me. But I enjoy it. I think it's one of those things where, as an actor, we're creative, right? We want to be creative, and we use our imagination. So sometimes we've got ideas for other things that at this point can only be expressed in a script. And then, from there, if we decide to take it to development, then it becomes something much more. But everything you write doesn't always turn into something, right? Sometimes it's just writing for the sake of yourself, or hopefully someone is interested in it. And I've also done like scripts that I've never ever acted in. So I've sold those scripts to other people. So
Wow.
and sometimes that can be fun. Other times it's darn, because I really would have liked to be that character in that story that I wrote. But it's just part of the business, right? Like, it unfolds the way it needs to sometimes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, and just to let everyone know as well, to update everyone, Douglas is actually involved in the current project regards Cynthia Rothrock. That's also going to be in the current sort of project called Black Creek. Now, my goodness, Douglas and Cynthia both together, it looks like a great character you're going to be playing, Douglas. Are you allowed to able to sort of relay a little bit about your character or not?
Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to say too much about that. There are a couple other projects that I've done too, or that I am doing this year too, that I'm not allowed to say a whole lot about. But generally speaking, they have me coming in doing action roles, or
Wow.
kind of. There's a few films this year. I won't say which ones, but that
Of
I've also
course.
a baddie, so I'm a bad guy.
Wow.
And well, there's one maybe I can talk about a little bit. There's a movie coming up called The Awakening, and it's by
Goodness.
a filmmaker named Aaron Glanfield. It's science fiction. It's about a post-apocalyptic world where basically mankind is sort of reverted to becoming in tribes to protect themselves. And this world has a variety of magical artifacts that are there that people are hunting for, and those that get them have certain powers. And so my character is kind of bent on ruling the world, and I've got to collect these magical tokens, and I will literally go to any lengths to get them, including hurting a lot of people. And
Goodness.
I've got to be careful about not giving too much away. But
No, that's fair enough. Yeah, that's great. It sounds exciting, Douglas. It's that was actually touching upon that sort of area. Actually, now playing sort of baddie, what is it like playing other roles? In terms of, because obviously I've done a bit more homework in here. Now, you know, you did a short film as well, and that looked really great. Now, a lot of the time, most people, you know, they don't touch upon the area where it goes far back, you know, really in the 1900s, you know, and you go as far as even like in just the year 2000. But when you go back, what does it feel like playing a character that's gone far back historically, even around that sort of time? You know, it's like, is it like a time machine where you've stepped in and then you've thought you've gone back in time, like in Back to the Future?
Well, I guess the same question can be said about going to the future when you're playing.
Yes,
The
yes, of course,
reality is,
yes.
I wasn't in the past and I am not in the future. And so you really got to use your imagination for it. But going to the past, I've done a few that are there. So everything from cowboy movies to I did one that was set in the 1930s. I've got another
Yes.
scary movie coming up called The Seance, which is in the 1930s. And then I've got one that I just finished doing some stuff and I've got to go back and do more on called Recreating 1912, which is actually a silent movie that takes place in that era of Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd, and I do that character too, and the stunt work in that day. And so I think sometimes there is a strong use of imagination to how do I fit in that world, and also of course with history we can do some research. So if we're able to go back and look and see, okay, how did they do these things, and not just how they shot it, but also as the character, how did they express it? What was kind of considered in vogue for an acting style back then? Because I mean, obviously, we don't act now like we did in the silent movies. It was a lot of pantomime and these kind of things. But
Cool.
to be effective for that era, we need to understand how they did it. And so I think we can research that. We can also get the costumes and the sets and the other elements correct. But there's still a lot that goes into it that you wouldn't think about if you're really looking to recapture some of those, the essence of it. In fact, like one of the things that's interesting, as I did, I probably can't say too much about this movie either. I played a character named Henry Wells, who's a reporter, and I had
Ooh.
in one scene I'm writing, and the camera's looking over my shoulder, and it's looking what I'm handwriting. And I literally had to practice that style of handwriting from that era in the 1930s, the cursive kind of stuff that they did. And then also, you got to remember, you got a camera over your shoulder, so you got to be legible and
Of
write in a
course.
way that it all fits. And it was a lot of work, but people wouldn't think of that, right? Like they just take it for granted. He just wrote down these words and blah, 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 and they move on. But it was a lot of work mastering that. The other thing that I think is sometimes interesting to master, and this isn't always a period piece, this can be for anything, is accents and voices,
Yes.
sometimes language. So I did a show this year called Free Play where I played a Russian mobster. And so I did learn some Russian and I spoke some before, thank goodness, but I also had to get the accent correct so that I
Wow.
could be that character. And by the way, they also dyed my hair blonde, which was interesting. So
Goodness, wow.
yeah,
This is see that everybody, you know, listeners and viewers out there, Douglas has become a very, very versatile, and you know that's what I have become a fan of Douglas as well, because other than just being off the camera, I like to be behind the camera and and being creative, and that's what's inspired me. Douglas is actually one of the people of what that's actually inspired me, not just the acting, but also filming and sort of directing and producing. Now, when you're directing, what's the longest amount of time period and when you feel comfortable on a take? Sometimes do you think maybe after like 2 or 3 takes, for something, or is it becomes so natural sometimes the way the person is when you're noticing it, even yourself as being the actor, you get so immersed in that character, or you see the other person in front of the camera as well. Do you take one take? Has there been a rare occasion when you've taken one take and you thought, do you know what, that was amazing, right,
yeah.
I'll take that?
That this is a really good question too, because honestly, I think that for me, and again, maybe there's directors who will disagree with me, but I think it's very instinctual. And even if I do one take, I also want to have at least a safety to know that I've
Yes.
got something to revert to. And I think, as a director, most times we are going to be involved in the editing process. Not always, but I try to be. And so we kind of already have a vision in our mind of what we would like. And then we certainly have to have sort of a degree of being open to what I call happy accidents. So sometimes we have something that we want in our mind, but other times things happen and it's like, this is even better. And we just don't know. But then we've got to sort of build around those happy accidents so that there's continuity all the way through, right? because you can't have a shot that just kind of creeps out as, wow, that didn't fit with the rest of it. Like I think the thing about film, and maybe this is the best way to say it, is that if you're a director or an editor or you're doing special effects and someone notices that you're doing that, you've failed. So you've got to do it in such a way that someone can participate in that movie going experience, but not come out of the movie. So in other words, if you're like, wow, that's an incredible shot, you know what, you've just failed, even though it could be an incredible shot. It's got to be in there seamlessly where you're still involved in the story, right? And I think that's often something I think that, again, as a director, you've got to kind of know instinctually, is this going to work? And I mean, I won't sugarcoat it. I think sometimes we fail, right? Like sometimes we succeed massively, other times we fail. And I also believe that there's like, far more talented directors than me. I really appreciate that I can do that. But one of the things that I've noticed for myself as a director that's really helped is always surround yourself with people smarter than you. And no kidding. So I did a movie a handful of years ago that I directed, that I had a guy, the DOP, he had done stuff on Brokeback Mountain, Shanghai Noon, Shanghai Nights, a variety of other shows. And no kidding, for me, my biggest job that I tried to do was just keep my mouth shut. Let him talk about what he was thinking on it, and then I'll maybe direct the actors to some extent. But even then, I kind of, made sure that really it's the shots, and I'm just listening to what he's saying. Like, what would he say? And it was the best film school that I ever had. So I think, maybe I'm a bit unconventional when it comes to a lot of directors, but I try to, if I can, definitely use the talents of those around me, because they'll make my films look better. And I think that that's something that, same thing with acting, right? Try and surround yourself with the best actors, because it's going to make your acting look better. Try and use the best scripts, because everything starts with the script, right? And so on and so forth. So I don't know. It's not always easy, but if you can find the best people, get them on your team.
Do you think it's hard sometimes for not just directors, but even actors like yourself, where, like on the previous episode, you may probably sort of see this later on, but I had Sylvia Seamack on earlier, and as a stunt person like yourself and an actor, now you don't want to be in a position where you feel like you're going to be typecasted because you've been seen to be playing these type of roles. In some cases, you probably feel comfortable playing these type of roles, but would there be a sort of a time in your acting career, even the acting in the actual film industry, where you might think, well, actually, I don't want to be in that position. I want to move on and do something else, because you do get like people like Kevin Hart, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, where they've done animation, like you mentioned about animation, you do a bit of writing and some stuff like that, where you've dabbled, you've been very versatile. So you're still kind of, do you feel like you're finding your feet, your ground, or where you might find an area where you feel more comfortable in later on?
Yes and no. I guess here's the deal: is obviously there's a lot of different diverse things that I'd like to do and play, and I'm grateful for those opportunities. But at the same token, there's a lot of actors that aren't really working. They're not busy. And so I would rather be busy and typecast a little bit than to be not working at all. And I have to confess, I do actually really love the action genre. I love it. It's super fun. And for now, I'm young enough that I can, jump out of helicopters and dive out of explosions and shoot people and all that kind of stuff. But there'll probably come a day when I can't do that so much, right? Like, if we're being honest. So I like that, but I have to confess, when I do have an action script that someone's looking to hire me to do as an actor, if possible, I prefer to find characters that have substance, or that are unique or memorable or quirky or something, because again, as an actor, I'm creating the legacy of who I'll be remembered for. And I just did a really cool movie, which I can talk about a little bit. Very exciting. It's called How to Be a Hitman 101. And I play a character called Samuel Finch, and he's a hitman, but he's not what we typically see in hitman movies, right? If you think about the typical hitman, a guy hiding in the shadows who's either shooting, choking, stabbing, poisoning, killing somebody, and then he disappears in the shadow. He's always cold-blooded. He doesn't really care about people or life, and so he's very ruthless. Well, Samuel Finch has all those qualities, but he's also very human. And so you can understand why he does what he does. You can understand the questions that he asks about it, and what things he's maybe uncomfortable with, and what his value systems are. There's and again, I don't want to give away too much, but there's a dialogue inside the film where he talks about his relationships, and has he been married, and why or why not, and how would it be to have a family, and like a hitman who, can you imagine a hitman driving a minivan picking up his kids from soccer practice? Like, it just
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
that kind of he thinks about a little bit, right? And so I like the fact that he's not just a cold-blooded killer; he's a human, and it makes it more realistic. And he is the protagonist of the story. But one of the things that I think is also interesting is a lot of people ask me this idea of, how is it to play a baddie? Well, the reality is that baddies don't really think they're baddies. They never do, right? They've got a mission in mind. They think they're doing something valuable for society or for others or for themselves or whatever. So in order to play a bad guy effectively, or even that hitman effectively, we need to understand that they're real people. Right. And if you look at amateur actors, it's funny because when I was in acting school, these are not my words, but I think they make sense. One of the acting teachers says is why many actors fail is because they do things like prostitutes and drunks and pimps and people with different sexual orientations to their own. They always play them one way. And they play them as the stereotypical version. They don't play them as people. And if you think about it, even like a pimp is a real person. There's a reason why he's chosen those values. Prostitute, the same way. They've chosen that, and they're a real person inside. They're not just a one-dimensional kind of person, or whatever it is. Like, we just need to understand that the more we can make them like a real person, the more that they're believable. Because we, as real person, we can then relate to other people that are real people, and I think that's what makes them interesting. So those are the kind of characters that I love to play. Do I always get offered that? Not always. Sometimes people do want that kind of, let's call it visual shorthand. They can see, oh, right away, that's the bad guy right there. Or that's the guy who's the hero. Or that's the guy who get killed, right? People sometimes like that. But I personally, as an actor, I sometimes like to see if I can bring something a little bit more to that person so that they're memorable, right?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, it's a lot to take on because, like, in regards to like preparation, when you're given a script, when you're offered a role, what's the process? What's the quickest that they sort of want you to respond? Because I know I myself, in the past and even now, there'll be times where you'll get an email or you get a message coming through. Someone might not have sort of got through to the kind of character that they want to be, and then you might get a last minute cancellation, or possibly where they've gone through a role and they thought, no, that role doesn't suit them, and then you receive something, say, well, actually, you look more suited for the role, and they've looked at your show reel and they think Douglas looks like the real deal. He seems to be that kind of character where he's quirky. He's very different to the type of character that we would expect him to be. So he may play on on that a little bit with a bit of ziz to it, and then you never know where it will lead, because a lot of the time there'll be roles where you think, should I have turned that down? And then you take it and you think, wow, I'm glad I didn't. As there have been roles where there've been positions where you thought, I might not take that because I don't feel comfortable with that yet. I'm not ready for that kind of role. Or do you take the role and then you've taken it and then you've played it? Now you have with other films that you've been involved in, and you thought, you know what, I'm so glad I've taken that leap of faith and thought, you know what, I'm going to go with it. And you get that feeling. Do you generally get that sort of feeling when you do that?
Every role is a little bit different, and every situation is different, and how we approach every character can be different. So I've had some things that, like, no kidding, that I've been approached with, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure I'm the right guy for that, right? And it's been something where you kind of struggle and wonder, can I bring something to this? Can I make this unique and interesting? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no, and you pass on it. Other times, honestly, you'd love to do it, and it's a scheduling conflict where someone needs me somewhere else, and then you've got this movie. Like, I've got a really big challenge coming up in the near future. So I'm going to be in London doing a movie with Chris Sanders called Big Cats, and it's a scary,
Wow.
really cool. So I'll be there from the 8th of May onward till about, actually, I'll be there, I think, on the 6th until about the 15th or so. Then I actually have to be in the Cannes Film Festival over in France. So I got to scoot across to do that really quick. But at the same time, I've got a film in LA that wanted to start on the 15th. So we're
Goodness.
trying to work, yeah, we're trying to work on the dates. Most likely, I'll end up being back in LA doing that around the 24th. But here's the funny thing is, I've also got a deal that wants me in Vancouver, Canada on the 30th of May. So sometimes, like we talked about earlier, you hit the ground running, you do this show, and then you're straight on an airplane to another place or whatever, right? So it can be tricky. And then with that, you've got to, how should we say, learn those scripts well enough that if you're going from place to place, and you can't just learn it on an airplane, because here's the thing I think a lot of people maybe kind of misunderstand. And it's probably different for every actor, right? But I've had people come up and say, what's the hardest part of doing a movie? And before I can even answer, they say, is it memorizing the lines? And it's true. There is some challenge to that, right? If you've got a lot of lines to memorize and all of these things, that can be a lot. But it's not just memorizing lines and sharing them. It's really, how do I turn those lines and also moments that are not spoken? How do I turn that into a real person again? How do I turn that into a character? So I'm not just, learning phrases to regurgitate. I'm how do I make this into a person that's real and interesting to watch, right?
Oh,
That's
goodness.
a mental effort. In my opinion, that's the harder part, right? Because once you become that character, the lines start to flow somewhat naturally.
I suppose, yeah, the fluidity in it, because, and the consistency as well of the character, because
Yeah.
I've known that there'd been certain characters I've noticed with other actors and actresses that I think on set they had to play, or even during that time, the duration that they're playing the character. I think it was a Harry Potter. That's right. Yeah, as far as I remember, it was a Harry Potter character,
Right.
and they said, as far as I can remember, that they were almost living that character daily, day in, day out, and people must have thought it was crazy and thought it was even amusing that they were going through the character for several months. They were like almost near enough living it as if they were that character in real life. No,
That too. I mean, obviously, I think it's important to be able to shut it off and turn it on, but you do need
of
to
course.
practice, especially if you're doing things like accents and things. So I won't lie. I mean, as I've had to learn accents and do things, like I was recently doing a British character, which is interesting. And so I would start talking as though I've got an accent from the UK, and I'd start even as I'd go through the stores and the supermarkets, and for dinner, I'd order as though I was from the UK, and then people wouldn't know, or you'd have phone calls with people and things like this, right? And
I love it.
if you're like, because you have to practice this stuff, right? So it's fun to do that. And so I think there is, to some extent, you've got to practice. Another thing that I do too, that's also, I know this sounds crazy. People are going to think I'm crazy after they listen to this. But I will sometimes, if there's certain lines that I know that I want to have delivered in a certain way, I'll practice in front of a mirror. So, and this gets even weirder. Okay. So what I typically do to make it more like the ambience of it, like I will, like what I know, again, this is gonna sound crazy. I have, like, in the bathroom in my home, I'll shut out the lights in the mirror, and I will.
Good
Hey,
evening, Karen.
I will then sometimes set up alternative lights, so I've almost got like film type lights in that bathroom as I'm looking in the mirror delivering the lines, right? So
Yes,
again, I got to be careful because I don't know if I'm allowed to share these lines.
of course.
Okay, so I'm telling you about this one that I just did as a Russian mobster, right? So I put the lights in the bathroom, I'm looking in the mirror, and the lines are something like, learn this lesson, never lie to me, right? So I'm looking down the mirror of, like, how does that look facially when I bring this out? Like,
Of course.
kind of make that happen, right? And so sometimes it helps me to kind of memorize those lines if I'm attaching them also to the emotions that character is going to feel in the moment and the way to play it out. So anyways, that's out.
Wow, and just to let everyone know as well, if they're not aware of it as well, you also had a mention and even an invitation during sort of King Charles.
Oh yeah.
The coronation.
Yeah, what is that? I think, oh, just looking at the date, that's tomorrow. So yeah, I'll be speaking at an event celebrating his coronation. I've got a really close friend who's very close to the royals and has been working in Parliament for years, and so there's a lot of things that we've been connected to some of the things with the royals and British government for a number of years, and he's just a great friend. So he said, I'd love you to be involved and share this. And so the intention, I think, is I'd like to, I guess, share something that I think would be useful to maybe individuals who are considering a career in film and TV and the arts. And because I believe, like, no kidding, there's a lot of important roles that we each have in our society, right? Like, we all have different things to do. But I do firmly feel that entertainment is an important part of our society. I believe that transferring the arts and enriching our cultures in these ways, it's a very strong thing that we can do. So I'll be talking a little bit about my beliefs on that, and then also hopefully inspirational and what's the word that I want? If there's someone watching that wants to be an actor, I want to tip the scales. I want them to say yes. Or if they want to be a filmmaker, I want them to be inspired by that. And just because, again, I had people in my life that did that for me. That's why I'm here, right? Because people believed in me enough to say, you can do this. And that's, I think, an important message for everybody to understand. Like, it's not an easy job,
No,
but
it isn't. No.
what is easy, right? What is easy, right?
It's true.
Never create, and maybe people would want to write this down because I think this is a good saying. I saw it once. I totally believe it. You'll never create something extraordinary by acting average, right? It's the truth.
Wow. In regards to that, who are involved in your sort of your daily inspirations? Because usually I ask who inspires you, but who are your inspirations?
Well, what's interesting, to answer that question, I'd have to maybe unfold my day a bit. So every day in the morning, I start obviously with a workout. Even if I'm on set, and funny enough, even if I have to be on set at 4 a.m., I generally wake up a couple hours early and I still do a workout. But here's the interesting thing about my workout. What I do while I'm working out, I know some people listen to music that'll get them excited for training and all these things. I actually watch YouTube videos. And generally, I'm looking at people who are inspiring, people that I admire. I watch films that can educate me, or videos that can educate me. There's a really cool series, and I wish I knew who it was by, but they've taken clips from a lot of popular actors and actresses as well. So people like, Tom Hanks and, even directors like Steven Spielberg, and they ask them about their keys to success and, advice on acting or advice on filmmaking. And I find it absolutely inspiring. So I listen to a lot of those kind of things. I also watch, there's a handful of videos from different people that are working in the industry that share their tutorials and their ideas. I do listen to a lot of personal development people too. Like, I'm a big fan of guys like Tony Robbins. I love Wayne Dyer, all these people, because I think here's the deal is like, for me, I think part of being a good actor is being a balanced person as well, and trying to gain as much life experience as you can so that you can draw on those moments when you need them. And so I'm always looking for, what is it? We take the best and we ditch the rest. So we try and find things that really resonate with us and that work with us and that keep us motivated. Now, in addition to that, I do try to surround myself by really good people that, like I said, generally are doing more than me. Because what do they say? You become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you hang out with 4 losers, you get to become the 5th, right? Like, it's that easy. So I try and find great and inspiring people, which can include even my personal relationships, either with, a significant other or with friends that I'll hang out with. I generally avoid hanging out with negative people. Heaven knows, as an actor, if we're being honest, there's already enough negativity in our life.
There is, yes.
We do tons of, like, I was just actually chatting with my sweetheart today, and I was just joking. I said, every 50 auditions that I do, I maybe get 1 role. So there's a lot of, no, not really. And it's funny because our industry is the only one that still can kind of discriminate based on how you look. And so it might even be my acting was great, but it's just like, oh yeah, you're either too tall, too short. We don't like that you got dark hair, your eyes are blue, get out. Like, it could be so many things, right? You're too skinny, you're too fat, you're too whatever. But in the film business, it's a visual medium. so they can
Yes.
literally do that. So I can prepare with all my heart to do something and then show up and then just go, we'll take the guy with the mustache, not him, right? So I mean, I can grow a mustache, but they don't see that. They're like, no, 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 no. So there could be a number of reasons why they send me out the door. And so I think you got to have a really strong anchor of supportive people, because there's already enough negativity in the world, right? And then I suppose another thing that I do try to do is I'm constantly trying to fill my life with empowering things, which can include, I know this is crazy, but anything from the diet that I'm eating. So I'm trying to always be careful that I'm not eating all kinds of junk, because that weighs your energy down, slows you down. Your body is your tool. It's also your weapon. So take care of it. I think also from a spiritual point of view, I'm always trying to connect to things that bring me peace and harmony. I don't consider myself really an emotional person until the camera's on. So I'm fairly level. And if you talk to people that know me, I'm not one of these guys that loses my cool and all this kind of stuff, because I say that for the camera, right? I also find in other areas of my life, I think you've got to be a good planner if you're going to do this as a career, because just like a real estate guy, you make commissions and then suddenly there's nothing for a long time. So like I've got other business ventures and interests on the side, but I also feel like I'm somewhat responsible financially, and I build a life that's secure, so that when there's not a movie, I'm not crying going, oh my gosh, how am I going to eat this week, right? Or audition that I'm not going in a mode of desperation, right? I love what Bryan Cranston said recently, and I mean, he's probably said it a number of times, but I saw it recently on a video where he says, your job as an actor is not to really get the role at an audition. Your job is to come in and present a character. And anything else is beyond your control. It's out of your hands. And that was really inspirational to me. And he's one of my heroes too. The guy's an incredible legend. I mean, even aside from Breaking Bad, he's just done some great work. And I just really resonate with that idea of our job as an actor is to present that. And if we've done that effectively and we've done, all that we know and all that we can do, then we've been successful regardless of the outcome. So I think we've got to have the ability, balance wise, to be okay when we don't get every role that we have. And it's okay to, and like you were saying earlier, sometimes it's a blessing that we don't get every role, right? And so, I don't know. I mean, it is funny. So how do we say this? So I had one role that actually recently that I was okay that I didn't get. And the reality is they don't always give you the full script to read either. They just sometimes say, here's the sides or the audition pieces and come and audition for us. And so I auditioned for this part, and, they called me back, and I must have gone through 3 or 4 callbacks, maybe even more. And in the end, they were ready to offer me the role. And then I got the script, and I just didn't really feel comfortable doing it, because there was a lot of stuff, like, no kidding, my character ended up being some kind of a weird, creepy pedophile type guy. And I was like, yeah, not really.
Oh my goodness, that's terrible. Wow.
But of course, in the original sides, that's not there.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
And again, I mean, I think that's a good story, needs to be told. It's an important story, and it shows how wrong those things are. But I didn't really feel like I needed to be that guy.
I suppose this is it. You do get there. There was one particular one, I wasn't aware of this until I did a bit more extra digging. There was it was Steve Coogan that actually sort of did one as well. Actually that's true. Karen Campbell mentioned that can happen.
Absolutely.
Because you do get roles where, yes, it's uncomfortable, but I think it's good that people need to have that kind of awareness where if they're able to do something like that, they need to have the role where they're giving you the full information, because there's not always the full disclosure. Because I think that Steve Coogan did one, and it was a very controversial one as well. And I think it was to do I think it was named now Jimmy Savile, and that was a very controversial one, and a lot of people got really upset about it. But I think it's more of the approach as well of how it's been, because I think what they've also got to consider is the people that have gone through it, the victims, as well as the ones being the character. because it's a very sensitive grey area, you know, and you've got a lot of other people as well, the victims of the families as well,
Yeah,
isn't it? You know?
and you know, not only that, like it's interesting because, well, first of all, I guess if we're kind of backing up, they can't always share the complete character while you're
No,
doing it.
no.
There's intellectual property there. They don't want spoilers going out. They don't want people to know, and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. So sometimes that's very secretive, which I can understand and appreciate. But when it comes to taking those roles, like I mean,
Yes.
you know, here's the deal. So I do a lot of cops. I also, you know, they've got me with guns. They make me the bad boy. Often they make me far sexier than I really am in real life. Like I'm not always that cool. Like thank you for making me look cool, but I'm not always that cool. So I've had it, like no kidding, at say fan events or like the comic expos or the comic cons or fan expos, where someone will come up to me. Like it's funny. I've had lots of women come up to me and they're just like all over me. They're gaga about me because they think I'm super cool. And then, you know, there have been girls that I've dated, and after a while they realize, yeah, I know he's actually kind of boring. Right? Like that's kind of the way they see me. And so you got to remember that sometimes when you're on a film, that affects the public perception of who you are plus what you could play. Right? And so I'm very cautious. I know I don't want to be typecast, but at the same time is I don't want to take roles that I'm not really wanting to take my career that direction or that I'm not comfortable with. And then, okay, so I'll tell you another thing that factors in my choices is, you know, my mom is going to go see this movie. And so if I'm sitting there dropping all kinds of language and doing stuff that I would not want my mother to see or my family to see, I'm a little bit apprehensive. Like I was asked not too long ago to even do a show with some nudity in it. Now, first of all, who wants to see my rear end? Like, I mean, that's like, I don't. That's already a messed up question, but
I love that, Douglas. That's actually touching upon that subject. I actually asked Meg, my partner, about that. Now, there was a few parts. Now, you know when they do a selection process where would you do this, would you do that, and there was a clip. And there's usually tick boxes, isn't there? You know, where you can choose for the role or not choose a role. And it's quite funny because my partner Meg, she said to me exactly what you said, and I said the same thing. I said, "Who'd want to see my rear end in a nude scene?" And we both burst out into tears of laughter, and we thought, "No, cut that idea."
It's really funny. I just did a photo shoot for a major magazine. I probably shouldn't say the name yet, but they did do me topless. And, you know, no kidding. So they had me do all kinds of working out before, proper diet to get the six pack all looking right, making me look good. And I hope they use a little Photoshop too, by the way. And you never know, right? But it was weird because I'm like, why does anybody want to see, like, you got Chris Hemsworth out there and guys like this, like people would rather see that. But there's somebody out there that's interested in that. Okay, whatever. And then what was the other one? Oh, there's a show coming up called The Setup where I go to prison. I'm a bad guy, kind of like I'm a good guy / bad guy, bank robber guy, whatever. Anyway, so in the film, and again, I got to be careful. I can't say too much about this, but at the beginning, when they bring me in, you know, they take my guns and I'm like, I'm going to want those back. And they're like, we'll see. Yeah, good luck with that. And I'm like, we'll see about that. And then they put me through booking, and, you know, as they, you know, how they have you hold that slate for showing your name and stuff, instead of just holding it, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this on your show. I hold it like this. So I'm holding it like that.
Oh.
All silly. And then they throw me in, they kind of disrobe me and put me in to get a shower. And then the guards spray me with this ice water to try and be jerks to me. But I got this big tattoo on my back that says Wild Child, and it's got a skull with 2 pistols. And then underneath it says, Hell won't even let me in. And there I am, totally butt naked, but you don't see anything except for my butt. And it's just like, okay, this is weird. But that was strange being in front of like this whole crew of people. And part of me is like, not just guys here filming this, there's women. This is like, and it's cold water too. All you guys know what that means, so I'm gonna leave that one alone for a minute.
Oh my goodness. Oh, Douglas, what's the funniest moment apart from what you just mentioned there that you've encountered during set? What's the funniest moment you can remember, you can recall, you know, during a set that's made you think, oh my goodness, was this supposed to happen? You know, like on a bloopers moment, like on the Jackie Chan type of films, a blooper.
There's been a lot of interesting things happen on set. I don't know about things that go ha 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 funny, but there's ones that are unexpected. So there was one movie that I did not too long ago where I get somebody, like, I'm a bad guy again, and somebody spits in my face. He actually did spit, and we said, okay, let's do it because we need it to look a certain way. And I was okay with it. The guy was a friend of mine, and he's like, I'm so sorry, I gotta do this. I'm like, well, you gotta do what you gotta do. And so yeah, he spit right in my face, and that was pretty interesting. So that was a bizarre experience on set. I also had one where the problem wasn't while we were filming, it's after they yelled cut. So there was a show that I did a couple of years ago called Oblivion, and I get stabbed. And I get stabbed a few times. And so I'm laying in the background dead in my blood, and the blood just leaked out all over. And so they said, we need you to stay in the background there while we're filming this foreground conversation now that takes place among these two other actors. So no kidding, I actually fell asleep. That was fine. I was there so long on the floor just laying there. But when I went to get up, the blood had like kind of solidified and dried. And for anybody that knows about movie blood, they often have a very high component of things like corn syrup in them and stuff. And so when they die, it's literally like glue. And no kidding. So I'm stuck to the ground after they yell, cut, time to get up, clean up. I could not get off the ground. And so they literally got these little like kind of utility knives and tried to cut away at it. And the makeup girls came with some spritzer bottles of water, and they're trying to like get that blood back, like liquefied or whatever. And so literally it took a long time for me to get off the ground. And then of course, you know, when I was in a position where I could go shower and take off my shirt also wouldn't come off because they were focused on getting me off the floor. And so it took a long time for me to just like be normal. And I did lose some skin and stuff. It was funny, but that was a weird one. In fact, it's interesting in this room here. I should have thought about this before, but I've got shirts in here where they've been sprayed with blood, and they send them home with me because if I have to come do reshoots, either they'll have them on set or I'll have it with me and I'll bring it with me. And so we can reshoot a shot if I need that blood on it, or they'll send it with me because we used it on set, but now I need to go do photo shoots that match that look and feel. So take the costume and use it.
Oh so my goodness.
In this closet, I can think of 3 or 4 bloody shirts as it is. Some of them, the blood is sprayed on me. I've got a stab shirt that's in here where I got stabbed in the guts. I've got another one, I think, that there's a couple bullet holes in it. So, yeah, it's interesting. Anyways, working with blood and special effects is always fun, but it doesn't always go as you'd expect.
Right, yeah. There's a few other questions I like to ask. Now, if you were to, because obviously your experience with sort of method acting and sort of costume. Now, if you was to be invited to an actual sort of Halloween or even any invitation to wear anything that you would want to wear on a fancy dress party, what would your ideal costume be? And what kind of character you would love to wear?
Let's just put me in a tracksuit and keep it easy. In a t-shirt, right? Honestly, it's funny because in a lot of the films I'm in, I often am wearing anything from a full suit, which I love to wear a smart suit. It looks great and you feel classy. So I do like to wear that kind of thing. But if I'm just casual at home, a lot of people don't get this. I'm kind of I know this sounds funny, I'm a sweatpants and t-shirt kind of guy a lot of the times. So again, back to this idea about women being disappointed. They see me in all these suave suits and all this stuff. And then at home, I'm just like, yeah, a bum. Yeah, actually, I've got a really, really, really kind girlfriend right now. She's absolutely amazing. And one of the discussions that we have that's often interesting, it doesn't happen often, but in some movies when I have to kiss another female.
Oh, interesting one, yes.
Thank goodness she's cool with it because I've also dated other people. They're like, I don't want you to do that. And it's tough. Right. So I think in my personal life, you've got to have somebody that's really supportive and aware of kind of what your job is. And that they also understand that, you know, just because you're acting a character, that's not really who you are in real life. Right.
It's true.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised with that. That was kind of, we must be on the same page of the type of question that I was going to ask you. And even before I was going to ask you it, you already gave me the answer. That's amazing.
I have to admit, it's funny. So I did a movie not too long ago where I did have to kiss this girl. And at the time I wasn't dating the girl that I'm dating now, who's just amazing. But her husband was on set. And that was just so awkward. So, no kidding. I spent more time talking to him to make sure it was okay than talking with her. And I became his buddy. And as soon as we were done there, I came over. It's like, okay, so I shook his hand and I'm like, okay, see ya. And I just got out of there quick because I'm like, yeah, I don't know how they feel about it at home. You know that, like, seriously, there's zero interest in your wife. Like, honestly, it's just like, this is a job for me. Okay. So it was uncomfortable, but yeah.
Oh, bless you. Yeah, in that aspect as well. When you're not actually doing the acting and that, do you have any other hobbies that you got interested into other than the acting and filmmaking?
Well, I think that everything that I do, as I mentioned, is kind of connected to what I do as an actor because it expands who I am as an actor. So I do competitive mixed martial arts. I started martial arts when I was a kid. And so I've studied everything from Goju-kai, Shotokan, Wing Chun, Aikido, boxed, Kempo, all that stuff. But my biggest thing lately has been Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for about the last 10 years. And so, no kidding, I do competitive mixed martial arts as well. So I have fought in tournaments and stuff. And so I'm a 2-time gold medal champion for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for Canada, in Western Canada. But I always talk about the gold medals. I never talk about those silver and bronze ones. But I have those too. I won't lie. And it's really fun to see Tom Hardy now getting invested in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a blue belt. So, I mean, maybe one of these days he and I will get a chance to kind of roll around a little bit and that. But it's a sport that I love. And because I love to do it, it's also one of the only sports I love to watch on television. Like, I love UFC, I love Bellator, I love watching those guys fight. Some of them are my friends, and I've got a couple that have competed at those levels. And I'm just in awe of that kind of athletics. But let's be honest, it takes a lot of time. And over the years, I've also in jiu-jitsu had a couple of really good injuries, and I've had some awesome black eyes. One of my favorite bruises that I ever got. This is awesome. Who says their favorite bruises? Like, most people, like, I'm not into getting hurt. Thanks, but I love it. I love the bruises, and I take pictures of all this stuff. So one of them is I've got somebody grab me once on my forearm, and their fingers made individual finger marks as a bruise on my bicep. And it was awesome. So I took pictures of it. The other one that I did, it was funny, is no kidding. I know this can maybe sound gross for some. So as we're doing things, sometimes you get caught in chokes and locks.
Yes.
And a lot of pressure on your jaws and things. So I've had my molars kind of knocked out, and this is a fake tooth too. But this one here, no kidding, I had it replaced a couple of times. And last time I was at my dentist, he's like, good luck to knock that out. I'll put this one in gold and all this stuff and did it deep. And so he says, good luck to knock that out. And my response was, I'll see you in 2 weeks. And and I didn't knock it out, but I was just being silly with him, right? But yeah, so I mean, I've been damaged in those things, but it's a fun sport. And the reality is there's far more injuries in things like American football or hockey and all that kind of stuff than there ever is in jiu-jitsu. And quite frankly, the reason I love jiu-jitsu so much is because it is a controlled sport, and it is a sport that's valuable. If you ever need a defense or to defend yourself, it's valuable, and it keeps me fit. And the way I compare it, it's not really, in my opinion, even though it is a martial art and a fighting sport, I look at it as more of chess. You're trying to outthink the other person. You're trying to bait them into setting themselves up so that you can take what you want. And I just love it. It's such an addictive sport. It's one of my favorite things I've ever done. In addition to that, for hobbies, I love to ride motorcycles, especially fast, because why would you ever ride a motorcycle slow? But I love motorbikes. I've got 2 in my garage right now. I drive a Suzuki Savage and a Ducati Monster. So I've got those 2 babies down in my garage. And then I also love to drive race cars. I love to drive fast, anything with a motor in it. I love to do it. And by the way, that's not just inside the vehicle, but I love to do stuff outside the vehicle too. In other words, riding on top, riding outside where someone else is sort of in control of your destiny. So I do a lot of those kind of things for stunt work and film too. One of the craziest stunts that I ever did that I thought was absolutely a blast was I did a jump from a motorcycle to a Hummer, and then let the bike go, make sure it doesn't hit the Hummer and stuff. And I had to do it a few times. It was great. And no safety equipment. So no helmet, no mouth guard, no nothing, because they're doing the close-up shots. So you kind of feel a little bit like James Bond when you're doing that stuff, right? And then, of course, I love to travel a lot, and wherever I go, I often do a lot of helicopter stuff. So I just got back from doing some stuff in Hawaii. So when I was in Kauai, I did a big helicopter thing, hanging out the side of a helicopter, taking pictures on my phone. And then I went over to Hilo and did the same thing over the volcanoes and stuff. So
Oh,
yeah, I kind of am a bit of a adrenaline junkie, I guess, right? Like,
great.
right? I don't know.
Oh,
Life's an adventure, rather than what is it that we say? My mom says this to me sometimes. She goes, "You're on TV more than you watch it." So I'm not the kind of guy at home that just sits and watches TV. I'm going to go live the adventure, right? I don't want to just watch an adventure. Right?
yeah, no, good for you, Douglas. The
Yeah.
the other thing is, just before to wrap things up, because as you're a sort of busy guy, and I really sort of honoured and humbled to have you on the show, on the Phil Carew Show 2.0, is that if you were to have anyone or two people actually historically or even sort of in present to have dinner with,
Oh wow.
and what would you talk about and where would you go?
Wow. You know what? There's so many people I would love to have dinner with. Like, I mean, even from my industry, people have often asked me, who would you like to work with? And I know some people don't always think favorably about him, but I would have loved to work with Marlon Brando. I think that would have been incredible. Also, James Dean would have been another one too. I think honestly, James Dean, most people think of him as the teenage sex symbol, but he was an incredibly talented person that literally changed the way people act in movies. I also would have loved to do a silent movie with Charlie Chaplin or Harold Lloyd or one of these guys. So I mean, my list could go on forever. Even living people that I'd love to work with, like I'd love to do a film with people like Martin Scorsese or Steven Spielberg. I'm a big fan of Bryce Dallas Howard. I think she's an incredible director. Robert Rodriguez is incredible. Quentin Tarantino, I'd love to work with. I mean, like, how much time do you have? Like, seriously, there's just so many people that I admire that are just crazy talented that I think they would bring out the best in me, and it would be a memorable experience that I would learn so much from. Right. So I don't know. Maybe that answers your question. Maybe not.
Well, it's actually it's more than enough, Douglas. I've actually thoroughly enjoyed having you on the show because I've learned a lot by even just listening about your personal experiences, and also been inspiration for filmmaking and those any sort of newbies, new actors or current actors out there, and those that want to produce and even filmmake, because there's a lot of people out there now. I think there are people even like of my age and even younger where they can be fearless or fearful or even hold themselves back, because of the way sometimes certain things can, they will perceive in the media. But I think also, like you mentioned before, with previously on the conversation during the actual show, is that be yourself. Don't be fearful of what other people sort of think in there, because that you're only going to stop yourself. Only you yourself you can stop yourself, in being that creative, because a lot of the time, we ourselves sometimes stop ourselves. We are our own worst enemies, in becoming something more, and stopping that creativity. I think it's more of sometimes being in the wrong company or not being in the right sort of area where you need to be around people that know what they're doing, and rightly so, like you said, that you need to be in that area or with a group of people that know what they're talking about, that know what they're doing, they've been in the industry for that long, but also add a little bit of pizzazz, with your own creativity. Obviously, that makes you who you are.
Well, interesting that you say that. So here's just a quick thought as well. As you talk a little bit about authenticity. Now, people would probably be the first to maybe say, you're an actor. You spend most of your time being someone else. But I want to share that you really cannot effectively be someone else until you've learned how to be yourself. You really can't, because you're going to draw on who you are to bring that other person real. And if you don't bring a sense of some truth to that, you're going to have a really hard time creating a character that people will believe in. It'll be one dimensional, and it'll be like, maybe in comedy, sometimes that can work because you can be the class clown, you can be fun. But I would venture to say that even guys like, Adam Sandler and Jim Carrey, when they're doing comedy, they're bringing part of themselves to that too. Now, I'm not a comedy actor so much, so I'm maybe not even qualified to totally talk about that. But I think authenticity is key. And no kidding, like even when I'm playing, let's again say a gunslinger or a hitman or somebody, um, uh, I love what Karen just said. She says there's a bit of Karen in every character that I play, and that's 100% true, right? You cannot be that person unless Karen comes along, and thank goodness for that. But even me as a hitman, if like actually here's a kind of a fun story. Okay, so I did photo doubling and stunt work in Open Range with Kevin Costner, Robert Duvall, Annette Bening, and all of these guys, like just legends. And I'll never forget there was a scene where Michael Gambon comes out and we're all sitting there with guns ready to like fight these guys, these bad guys and stuff. And I've got sidearms and I did 2 different characters in that scene. So, anyways, as I'm sitting there, no kidding, when he comes out and he's like, I can't remember his exact line, but he's something like, I've got this guy in here in the jail and I'm going to kill him. You guys throw your guns in the dirt. And he's threatening us. And I remember feeling with the gun there going, should I drop my gun? Like it was that real. Should I? Or we drop our gun, like this guy's coming back. We can't do that. We got to stand up for it. We got to stand up for this, what we know to be true. And when you bring that feeling of yourself, what would you do in that circumstances? If somebody really had your friend in a jail and said, you get your gun out and you drop your gun or I'm going to put a hole in it, what are you going to do? Right? What are you going to do? And so I think just like what Karen's saying here, you cannot start bringing that kind of realism unless you own it, unless you're there authentically. And the one thing that's different about theater than film, and again, I love theater. I've never really done a lot of it because I'm not that talented. Okay, I'm just being honest. I'm not that talented. Theater, you're broadcasting and you're being this thing for the whole audience, and they enjoy that. And you've got you've got this character you've created. But in film, sometimes we're zooming up so close on your face and it's out of context. It's out of chronological order. You're doing this pickup shot. I'm telling you, if you lie, it can be seen in your eyes. Right? So if I'm like, say I'm a cop in a show and I'm interrogating somebody and I'm asking them a question, if I really don't believe that I need the answer to that question, you'll see it in your eyes. Right? So you be so authentic because the camera picks up everything. Whereas with an audience, sometimes they don't see every detail. Right? And the audience will be forgiving because they know this is a play. But when we're watching a movie, we are trying to suspend that disbelief. We want people to feel like they're actually watching something unfold in reality in real time. So if you lie, you just destroy the entire illusion, right? So it's important. That authenticity is so important.
I'm enjoying every second and moment of this interview, Douglas. It's been sort of a moment in time where I've been quite patient and been able to think. I was thinking right behind the camera, just to let the viewers and the listeners know on the Phil Carew Show 2.0. I was just thinking, right, what am I going to ask Douglas? What am I going to say? Because, I spoke to Douglas. We've been sort of kept in communication sort of over time, but obviously, when down to sort of the changes through, but not just through COVID. 19 going through, but obviously when filming started sort of rolling again, because there's been a lot of times when it's been hard, when people have tried to get a role and even getting back into doing things and getting involved back into just filming as well as acting. And it must have been hard, because a lot of people, when you go back into something, it's like more of like, when they say, the saying goes, if you don't use it enough, you lose it. And that sense of motivation to go back again and do something, because I know there's a lot of times when most of us, when we've been in something, that we're only human, there's part of us, there's something there that has kept us where we are now. Because obviously once you lose some sudden interest, you go a different path, and you've obviously, there was something there that's kept you going and thought, do you know what, I'm going to keep doing this. Because, there's obviously other people out there that will probably think the same way, and say, well, look, no, don't stop. You're doing something right. It might not come along straight away, but there's something there about you. That's obviously what's got you into the roles that you're doing and the line of work that you're doing, Douglas, and, you're reaping the rewards now,
Yeah, it's not just for actors too. Like, seriously, Like I've got friends that are athletes, and same thing. If you quit early, you're not going to ever rise to the level of a proficient athlete. I've got a friend that's a doctor. You go to medical school and you decide, yeah, chemistry's a little hard, so I'm just going to be like, everything in life worth doing will have hard moments. So the big question you just need to ask is, what's the hard that you choose? You're going to choose to do something. You're going to get some hard with it. So what's the hard that you choose? And if it's something that your heart is connected to and you're passionate about and you love to do it, then you better do it, right? Because here's the biggest thing that I think a lot of people struggle with is, sometimes let's call it, they cash out too early, right? They wanted to do something, all of a sudden it gets hard, and then they say, I cash out. Well, what's going to happen is they're now going to live the rest of their life with the regret, saying, I wonder if, right? I could have been, right? I could have or should have or whatever. Those are the hardest weights to carry, harder than anything you'll have to do, right? Like, it's easier for me to go to an audition and get rejected. It's easier for me to go to acting class after acting class. It's easier for me to get on an airplane and travel out of the world and wake up at 4 a.m. in a different time zone to get started on a movie than it is for me to look back at my life and say, man, I could have been somebody, right? I'd rather be authentic to who I know that I need to be and then just get to work, right? Because everything is hard. Everything will have hard moments. But the other side of that is everything also has good moments too. There's moments, like, no kidding, when I was standing on the red carpet recently and I received that Best Actor award, and I got a chance to, like, no kidding, when I got off the stage, I'll be forever thankful, by the way, for this. So when I got off the stage with that award, a couple of my best friends were the first people to greet me there. One of my friends, Sean Kennan, who you guys know from Karate Kid 3. He's also, he was Mike Barnes, and he's in Cobra Kai season 5 and season 6, but no one's supposed to say that yet. Jack Yanni, my other buddy, he's in Wakanda Forever and Woman King. I just want to give them a shout out. Like, what a cool thing to share that moment with your best friends. And I'll tell you, when I grabbed that little guy, and by the way, I have him here just to look at.
Yes.
When I had that in my hands, all the difficult stuff that I'd ever encountered in the movie business, I wasn't thinking about that at all at the time, right? So just remember that we do the hard stuff so we can experience the amazing stuff. And when we're experiencing that amazing, we don't really forget, or we don't really remember. We do forget the hard stuff. We don't remember the hard stuff. It's kind of like when your mom had you as a baby. I'm sure that was lots of challenging times, and I'm sure it wasn't comfortable. I'm not a man. I've never had a baby, but my heart goes to my mom, especially, who had me, because I'm sure it was not easy. But she always tells me that when I saw your face for the first time, everything was worth it. Now, I don't know if she feels that way today, because I was an easy person to raise as a child. But at that moment, she was grateful. And, I think that's just the way life is, right? When we accomplish something incredible, the struggle is what made it worthwhile. By the way, Karen, I'm just noticing your comment there. She says, great interview. Thank you, Douglas. Lots of invaluable advice. Again, Karen, thank you for tuning in today. And the same goes for all of the other wonderful people that we've seen. I see, there's Wayne and some others that are there. And I apologize, my comments have now gone past where I can't read all the names. But thank you for tuning in. And I do want to say another thank you too, is that the reality is although I'm an actor and I make movies and things, and that's my job, and I love it, and I'm grateful for my job, the truth is I couldn't do it without people who watch the movies. And so I want to thank you guys for, first of all, Phil, for having me on your show. It's been so kind of you to have me on and to, let me share a few of these crazy experiences. But I want to thank you guys for seeing the movies that I'm involved in and for supporting the people that have given me an opportunity to live my dreams and to do the movies that I do. The reality is movies don't work without an audience. And I think sometimes we don't give our audiences enough credit, and we don't show enough gratitude, and we don't, express how really you guys mean so much to us. So sometimes people ask, oh, it must be really hard when you go to like the fan expos and the Comic Cons, and you got to be on your best behavior and be smiling and signing all these pictures and doing it. That's a long day. And I'm like, I love it, because if these people didn't love what I do, I couldn't do it at all. And so I like to spend time with people who love our shows. I'd love to spend time getting to know them and even hear what their dreams are. And I find these people so fascinating and interesting, because these are the people that love what I do, and I want to get to love what they do. And I try to meet as many of those people as I can. So I'm just grateful you guys tuned in today, and thank you. I'm glad it was valuable, because, I don't always know if it's valuable. I'm glad it was.
It's been very valuable to me as well, because there's not many times when you get great guests like yourself, and amongst all the other guests that I've had as well. Every guest that I have is I cherish all the time, because when I first started the show, you just put it out there to everyone, all the audience and the listeners. There are times, it's not always easy, where you want to get not just getting people on the show, but organizing everything, putting everything together, like you would do, your preparation for, like, being an actor, a producer and writer, anything like that. And, even being on the show, having guests like yourself and everybody else that has been on, it means a lot to me, because a lot of the time people think, well, how do you get these guests, and what do you do? And I think, well, I think one thing I've noticed is that, get it, like you mentioned before, and rightly so, it's the authenticity. Now, people get the authentic feel, behind and on and off the screen, on off the camera. And, if it gets to the point of where, are you going to
Yeah, I see her comment.
Yes.
Karen's asking Black Creek. Yes, I am. And I'm not allowed to say too much about it, but I will say that I think he's kind of a scoundrelly bad guy-ish. Kind of. I can't say too much, so I'm trying to say it without saying it. And is Hank Winslow. And I don't know, just put it this way. You may not want to trust him. I'm just going to say that. You may not want to. Yeah. So and she's like, that's cool.
Ooh.
We're going to have some fun with that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I really appreciate everyone coming on and tuning in. And like I said, I'd like to thank Douglas Vermeeren coming on, because it's been quite a while where I know he's a very busy guy, and even everybody else, you're all very busy people. But I also sort of like to show my appreciation as well for everyone tuning in and making comments and supporting me, and even Douglas as well, sort of over time, and been watching his films. And it's amazing, and I continue doing this, and I love doing what I do, getting to know the person themselves, because a lot of the time, you see a lot of things where they see a lot of pictures, they see a lot of the sort of the more formal sort of aspects, where I like to get informal, get into a little bit of nitty gritty, and sort of get to know the person a bit more as well, on the screen, because you don't always get these type of questions, Douglas. You probably I've mentioned this to a lot of guests before, just before we wrap up, is that you get a lot of questions where you've probably been answering the same question of several people that you've been interviewed on. And on the Phil Carew Show, we like to sort of dabble a little bit, have a bit of fun like we have today, and you get sort of great fans and sort of listeners and viewers like Karen and Wayne and everybody else that have been watching, maybe not now, but even on the replay on there, no doubt they'll probably comment and sort of ask you sort of a few questions that I probably wasn't aware of, the great questions themselves. It's the viewers out there and the listeners that will make it what the show, the Phil Carew Show 2.0. Don't forget to check out, if you want to know a bit more about Douglas Vermeeren, there'll be some information that no doubt I'll be able to, obviously within sort of reason and permission from Douglas, of what I can sort of relay to you guys. I'll stick a little bit of information link with sort of within reason from Douglas, with his permission, on after the show. And if there's any other comments, if you any suggestions or any questions that you want to ask, that Douglas would be able to sort of answer, at his own time when he's ready, feel free to do that. Thank you very much for coming on the Phil Carew Show. It's a real honor, Douglas, and I won't forget this, being able to have this interview with yourself. And oh my goodness, wow, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
It's been great, because nobody realizes that when you have all of you guests that have been on the show, and even Douglas, it's quite emotional, off the screen as well, because you don't realize that sometimes, even a little bit of, a few minutes to like an hour of someone's time, it shows that, they want to show what they're promoting as an actor, but even as themselves, and that's what I love about the show, and the authenticity and the relaxed sort of feeling behind it. I don't want to be intrusive, and I don't want to be pushy or even sort of too formal, as I would say, because we've had some sort of great sort of conversation back and forth here, Douglas. Right, I'll let you go, my friend, and enjoy the rest of your time. Where are you at the moment? Are you in Canada or?
I'm in Canada until the 20th. Then I'll be in Tahiti, and
Ooh.
I'll be over in the UK on, I think, the 6th or 7th. We're doing Big Cats over there next. So that'll
yes.
be
We'll look forward to. So if you're about, Douglas, I'll hit you up and maybe have a coffee one day if you're about in the UK, or if I'm traveling about, we'll catch up off the screen. So
maybe we'll introduce you to some other actors for that show, and maybe you can bring them on the show, or maybe you even want to broadcast live. I'm sure I could get it arranged for something with producers. Let us know.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. You've heard it officially from here, from Douglas Vermeeren. He's going to be in the UK at some point, so very, very soon near you. So listen out. If you're not quite sure, if you only just tuned in or even just on the replay, give it a listen. We've had a really, interesting and intuitive sort of conversation, because I've never had anything like this in regards to filming or acting on there, and it's been very valuable information. Thank you very much once again, Douglas. I hope to have you on the show again at some point to give us a little bit of an update on what you're doing in the foreseeable future, and watch some of his shows and his films, because I've enjoyed sort of his progress and watching a few bits and pieces of here and there when I can. So I'm going to have a little Douglas Vermeeren binge at some point, and he'll probably laugh behind the camera and think, so which one are you on now, Phil?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been really good being with you.
All right, folks, take care. Don't forget to share, subscribe, and comment. We're live on Facebook and also on YouTube at some point, and on LinkedIn. So take care, everyone. Thank you very much. Welcome to the Phil Carew Show. And we're here. I'm sure we'll hear from Douglas at some point in the near foreseeable future and update us with some other projects and relay a bit more of what he can in terms of not just filmmaking, but of the films that he's in. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.